The Prodigal Son, one of the most famous Bible stories, Bible parables that you'll ever hear in the Christian and maybe even the Judaism faith. Now, what we learn about this chapter, this verse, can help us out in many, many ways. So let's just look at the story. Luke chapter 15. Before we get to the prodigal son, we see two stories that are shorter that talks about something being lost. The first one is a woman who loses her coin, and then there's one where a man or a shepherd loses his sheep or his goat. With both stories, we see that when the item is found, there's rejoicing after the item is found. Now, when we get into the latter half of Luke chapter 15, we meet a son, a brother, and we meet a father. So you have two sons and a father. And the story starts off there where the son asks his father for an inheritance. And this is where you want to do a little bit of digging to find out what is he really asking. When a son would ask for an inheritance in that day, he was basically asking his father or telling his father, I'd rather you be dead. It's basically what he's saying. Like, I want you to give off this land. I want you to give what you have. I want you to split it up between me and my brother. I'm going to get a share. He's going to get a bigger share because he's older. And I want you to do all these things now. It's usually not how it goes. Usually the inheritance is split when the father passes away. The older son gets a double portion and the younger son gets the lesser of the portion. Now, he asks his father this while his father's living. Complete slap in the face, complete disrespect. So just seeing that already, you see this relationship or this idea that the son has about what he wants more than what his father may want for him. He tells him, give him the inheritance. And the thing that happens shocks us all. The father goes ahead and he gives the son an inheritance. He gives him the inheritance. So which means he has now sold some land. He has given him some money. He's given him these things. And of course, the son is probably not able to handle the amount of pressure that comes with this. He gives him that. And all of a sudden, the Bible talks about him taking the inheritance and going to a far country. And the Bible talks about him him spending the money with riotous living. So pretty sure, it doesn't say exactly, but pretty sure he went, got harlots, or in our day, prostitutes, probably drinking, doing all sorts of things. And in the Middle Eastern world, he was probably the guy now that was generous by giving gifts. You know how it is, like that one guy who has it all. He's helping out the neighborhood. He's doing all of these things, but he is not mature enough to handle what he's been given. So the Bible talks about him squandering all his living, and then now he's at a place where he doesn't have it anymore. So he goes from being in his father's house to leaving his father's house with an inheritance way too early to now spending all of it. He does not have it any longer. The Bible talks about him going into a foreign country and going to go work for them, and he's feeding pigs. So Jesus is talking to a self-righteous crowd at this moment. So you want to think about that as we look at the story. He's talking to a self-righteous crowd at the moment. And this self-righteous crowd is also Jewish. So you know automatically they're not supposed to be touching pigs and any of that stuff. And the Bible talks about him doing that job, and then him even being so low that he would want to eat what the pigs were eating, but they wouldn't give him the food to do that. So that's a big difference. He goes from son to living on top to having nothing to now wanting and desiring to eat what the pigs eat. Now, here's where the story takes a little turn. Most people think when they hear that he came to his senses that it means that he's coming to repent. This is not what he's doing. He's basically scheming a plan to get to his father and pay the money back, and then just get back. In the Jewish custom, there's a ceremony called the Kezuzah ceremony. And with this ceremony, one of the first parts is the son has had to have gone out, taking the inheritance early, and spent it with Gentiles or people who are not Jews. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. The son comes to his senses, the Bible says, and he says, I'm out here starving, just paraphrasing. My father has hired servants. Why don't I go back and at least just work as a hired servant? He's not asking to be back in relationship with the father. He's asking to go and work as a hired servant. So I don't have the I don't really desire the relationship. I just want to pay off this debt. Now remember, in the Kezeza ceremony, if the boy goes off and spends his inheritance with Gentiles, he's supposed to be rejected and cast out of the community forever. So now he comes to his senses. He starts to make his way back. He's going back home. He's going to tell his father, I'm not worthy to be your son. Let me be a hired servant. He's not asking for, like, I want to be restored as a son. I'm not worthy to be a son, so I'm going to just go ahead and be a hired servant. I want that. Now, in those times, if he entered the city and the elders and the people saw it, the Kezeza ceremony would stop him before he even got any further. So they would literally try to break pots at his feet, letting him know that he's rejected, he's alienated, he's not welcome in the community anymore. They would do these things before he got into the community, and his father would be watching from afar off. Now that's brutal. That stings on the inside, probably deeper than anything. But the story takes a turn. Let me tell you this first. In a Jewish custom, Jewish men do not show their legs. Right? When they pray, their legs are covered. They're not showing their legs out of reverence for their religion. The father sees him coming from afar, and the father starts to run towards him. So Jewish men are not going to be running either, because their legs would show. So the father is like, he's showing his legs by probably running to get his son. And he's also running to get to his son before the town sees him, and they go ahead with the Kezeza ceremony where they reject him, they cast him out, they make sure he feels alienated. So the father's like, let me get there before him. Now, as the son, I'm thinking, hold up, I'm coming back to be a hired servant. Now my dad is running after me after I wanted him dead. The father comes, the father runs towards him, and he doesn't say much right at that moment. The son says, Father, I've sinned against heaven, against you, make me one of your hired servants. And the father does something which is crazy. He hugs him, he kisses him, he tells them, go get the robe, which would signify royalty. Go get the ring, which would signify the family authority. That's how they paid for things back in the day, with the family ring. Go put sandals on his feet. Servants didn't wear sandals. Sons wore sandals. Sandals were considered to be, at that time, something that is really, really important. So if you were a slave or a servant, you weren't wearing sandals. And he says, go kill the fatted calf. They wouldn't normally be eating meat at a normal meal because it's so expensive. But he says, go and kill the fatted calf. So fatted calf, expensive. Go ahead and put a ring on his finger, sandals on his feet, and a robe. He completely restores him when the son should have gotten the Kezeza ceremony. The son did everything to deserve getting put out of the town, getting alienated from the family, not being welcome in the community. Because remember, when he asked for the inheritance, it shows the community too that I no longer want to be a part of you guys. So it's like a double slap in the face to his immediate family and then the community. He does this, those things happen. Now they're having a party, everyone's there, they're having a party, and the older son hears it from afar off. And this is where the story takes the turn, because it's about two sons and they wanted the same thing. I'll tell you right now, the older son hears it and he asks the servants, what is this going on that I hear? And they say, oh my God, your father's throwing a party because your younger son, your younger brother is back. And the older son gets furious. And this is symbolic of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. He gets furious, and the father gets furious, and he doesn't want to come into the party. So he doesn't want to come be a part of the community. So now he got a son who left the community and didn't want to be a part. Now you have the older brother now. So I'm imagining what's going on in his father's head. Like, how does he feel about all of this stuff happening with his son? The older son is furious, and he tells his father, once his father comes out, like, what are you doing? Like, he starts to be self-righteous by saying, I've been with you forever. I haven't sinned, and you've never killed a calf for me to make merry or for me to enjoy with my friends. But this son of yours goes and spends his money on harlots and riotous living, and you throw him a calf. You throw him a party. Basically, the older son is saying, like, I did everything right, and you didn't do anything for me. That's self-righteous. I did the things that were right, and yet by me still doing those things that were right, you didn't reward me. Self-righteous lets us put our works and ourself before what God really is trying to work in us. So he says, I do all these things, you didn't do that. And the father says, you were with me this whole time. You had access to this stuff. Your brother who was dead is now alive. And Jesus leaves the story like that. Stay tuned for part 2.